500. 500 subscribers. That's pretty crazy. I didn't know that I was going to get that many subs on this channel. I'm almost paranoid that like I'm getting botted or something, because there was a very long time when all of a sudden I wasn't getting anybody, and now it seems like I'm getting a steady trickle of people in, and my videos on D&D and miniatures are getting steady views. So it's just like, I don't know. Thank you so much for subbing, and I will try to keep up the D&D content. This video is just some sensible advice, and then it's also a call to you to ask me your D&D questions. So if you have any questions about D&D, or you have any questions about miniatures, or anything like that, just please put them in the comments below, and I will do another video where I will answer those questions. But as of now, I'm going to be talking to you about sensible advice to starting out in D&D. So, a big thing that I keep on coming up with is people wanting to do too much with D&D too soon. If you're new to the game, it's D&D 5e is actually very well balanced, and hopefully you'll be playing with like 3 to 5 people. It's balanced really well for that sort of group, and at its core, it's still a game. So even though there is a collaborative storytelling element with D&D, you really should play the game first as the rules in the book. And the rules in the book, it's clearly a game. And there are stakes, i.e. the players can die, the players can fail. And that's the biggest thing. People are constantly doing this new the new D&D games out there, like, for Adventure Zone and stuff like that. Like, the DM on that one, Griffin, like, did this whole thing where he basically said, oh, no, I'm not going to have any players die. And then this new arc is all about, like, this thing where it's like, oh, the players are entering into this big, scary place where they might die. And it's just like, well, no, there's no teeth. There's no teeth because he specifically said in an earlier thing that no players are going to die. So just the game as in the book rules, yes, there's a chance of players dying. Now, as a DM, you can always kind of fudge the rules a bit and make sure that doesn't happen like first thing. But it has to be there as a way to get the people to understand that they have to use teamwork and collaboration, and that there's stakes and meaning to the whole thing. There's rules specifically. There's all players can use their action to help other players by giving them advantage on a number of actions that the other player can take. Hardly anybody does that in D&D because they get too caught up about what their player can do rather than doing the teamwork that's actually required for their party to survive when playing by the actual rules. And there's other little things like, defensive stance. I've never once, in any of these new D&D video series or D&D properties, I've never once seen a player use the defensive stance thing. Though if they were actually playing by the actual rules, like, yes, that's something. If they stumble into a situation where they screw up and they're surrounded by enemies, the defensive stance thing should actually be something that's a viable thing for them to do to survive the encounter. Instead, you never see that because they just don't. They're not. The vast majority of those stories and those it's focused on story. It's not focused on the actual rules. So my sensible advice is just to read the book and just follow those rules. And those rules will give you a very deadly game that the players will have to use teamwork and strategy to make sure that they don't die horribly and they can continue playing. And thus you'll get a lot of, you'll get stakes and the players will collaborate more and so on and so on and so on. So other little things. And it's up to the DM to let players know that, hey, this is a game that requires teamwork and creative problem solving. And again, you also have this other thing called inspiration, which is really something that all DMs should be using to inspire their players to be more creative in order for them to conquer the situation in front of them. Another thing is, when you're first starting off a game, just use the point by or use the stat array. Rolling for numbers for new players can cause huge issues. And I know other people have tried to come up with new ways to handle this to avoid that. But frankly, it doesn't work. For example, Matthew Colville came up with this kind of system so to make sure all characters are heroic. And there was a post on Reddit under the D&D Reddit. I don't really use Reddit that much. This is one of the times that I try to go in there to, I don't know. I'm basically wasting my time. But yeah, so I was on Reddit, and this one player was describing the worst game ever. And he went point by point about how the start of the Against the Giants campaign was just so terrible. And one Reddit person said, "Oh, you should tell him to look at Matthew Colville videos." And then another person who was paying attention said to the first person, "No, from what he described, the DM was already following Matthew Colville's custom rules regarding player generation." So that's a situation where some poor player literally had the absolute worst time. And I think it was because instead of just doing the stat array or the point buy, the DM decided to go with this Matthew Colville's somewhat complicated, somewhat convoluted way of dealing with that. And these lights suck. I keep on getting this weird thing here. Is that better? Whatever. Anyways, I don't care. I'm sorry. You're just going to have to deal with the strobe effect as I gesticulate around. So it was a really bad situation created because the DM tried to do this more complicated thing, and clearly, even though he had experience, I don't think that situation would have happened if he would have just gone by the plain rules and just avoided rolling numbers for brand new players. Because again, it's you have to realize, even if you yourself are a DM who has got a lot of experience, the other players, they might not have a lot of experience. So if they're going to roll their numbers, that's going to cause issues for them that you might not be able to help out with them. So, anyways, so that was another quick thing. So, so another thing. This is supposed to be a creative endeavor between players and DM. And I honestly think the core rules really help do that. So, like I said, I'll just reiterate myself again. Make sure your players understand this is a game geared towards teamwork and creative problem solving. Don't roll for stats for new players. Have everybody. And that's the big thing, too. You can't have some people use array stats and then some people roll for stats. That's crap. And let me tell you something, too. Even though it's a possibility that people could roll those stats and they could get like a 4 or a 5 for all their stats. That never happens. When people roll for stats, it just so happens that they always happen to roll 18s and stuff for their stats. And boy, isn't that convenient. And yeah, it's crap. You can't really trust players about stuff like that. And you can't trust players not to lie about shit. I'm sorry. The first episode of Adventure Zone had Travis, one of the players, just swearing up and down that he wouldn't lie about his rolls, and then months later down the road, we find out that he had been lying about his rolls all the time. That's just human nature. Because it's a game, people will automatically just not take it, they're going to cheat. And that's just human nature. That's how it is. So rolling for stats and stuff, it's just not a great way to start people off and let them understand that no, it's not about the numbers all the time. The numbers are a part of the game. The real game is the collaborative storytelling. But I really don't think in most cases you can actually start out with the collaborative storytelling. Rewarding people for creativity and being creative is a big part of the game. But again, all these shows that you see, the vast majority of them have people that are creative for a living. These are people who are improv comedians. These are people that are voice actors. These are people that are actors. These are people that have the skills to be able to make collaborative storytelling, and they're doing it right off the bat. And you, as a regular old DM with regular old players, you're not going to be able to do that off the bat. So you're going to have to rely on the rule set, the really good rule set that Wizards of the Coast put down on you. And you're going to have to rely on that rule set to like kind of create this bond between the players. And to do that, you have to have a game, and that game has to have stakes. So don't go easy on your players. Don't start off immediately starting to like go against the rules. And it's going to be both ways. You're going to have times when your super cool dragon or whatever is going to get killed off easy. And that's the nature of 5e. 5e is incredibly deadly towards players. 5e is equally as deadly towards monsters. And sometimes you're going to roll a couple 2s and 3s, and your big scary encounter is just not going to go your way, and the players are going to win easily. That's going to happen. And no, I don't think that your response in that scenario should be immediately start fudging dice around. I was just listening to a Twitch stream where they were answering questions. They're like, oh no, DM is the god in this scenario. DM is what this DM says, DM goes. And it's like, that's a slippery slope. Because then you're going to start changing rules, and you're going to start changing outcomes, and it's going to cause more problems than it's going to fix in the long run. As the DM, you also have to follow the rules as well. And yes, as the DM, you can fudge the dice, but I would really just put a restriction on yourself. Don't fudge the dice unless, there's something really interesting going. I hope you understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about collaborative storytelling and having stakes in your game. I might not be doing the best job of explaining why these things matter. This system is very old school, and people, I think, are still kind of treating it. Oh, and even worse, people are talking about going back to like 4E stuff. As a player, 4E stuff was terrible. And I didn't want to run a game in 4E. And playing a game in 4E was horrible. Critical Hit podcast ran a game in 5E, and those podcasts were they went by so quickly, and there was so much, it moved so much quicker. Before that, when they were playing 4E, it would take literally an entire hour-long podcast to get through one battle. And that is typical for 4th edition. And it just wasn't fun. It just wasn't fun. Like the vast majority of people. To make that work, you have to have a DM who is very skilled and will take a ton of time. And unfortunately, sometimes you just don't have that ton of time. And that's the great thing with 5e. If you play the system as is, wow, the game moves along quickly, and guess what? You don't have to sink as much time in to do all this stuff. Like, the rules are just there, and it clicks, and it makes sense, and stuff moves quickly. And, all these people that are saying just adding more stuff and doing homebrew, just don't do that. Don't do that for the first game, for the first campaign session. So for your first 5 sessions, don't use any homebrew. Don't use anything from any other systems. Just go with the base game. Now, you can make your own scenarios, but the DM rulebook, the DM guide has all the rules that you need to make your own scenario and follow the rules. By doing those 5 games with the plain vanilla rules, you're going to be well on your way to setting up a scenario where your players will gel, and you will also gel with your players, and you'll be well on your way to doing more of a collaborative storytelling person arranged around this game, because Dungeons & Dragons is still a game. Your players are just going to die in this game. That's the way it is. So either you're going to do what everybody seems to be doing in fudging numbers and using homebrew and trying to come up with those solutions, or you can avoid doing all that and play the game as it's sort of naturally plays, where people can use teamwork and creativity and problem solve. Let the players know that they can do this stuff, where they can help other players and give them advantage. And they can take total defense, and they can do simple creative things that will help them to survive, the D&D battles and whatnot. And, I'll maybe make another full video talking about how weird 4E was, and how weird it is that somebody wants to bring back a system that's so labor intensive and took so long and just was such a pain to deal with. I guess that's it. So if you have any questions about D&D, starting off D&D as a player or a DM, then please let me know in the comments, and I will make a video answering those questions. Also, if you have any questions about miniatures, I'm doing a new miniature project now where I'm doing a custom gelatinous cube. Last time I did this, I just used custom molds that I made out of foam board. I'm basically making a proper silicone mold instead of doing just like the kind of foam board ones. I'm going to try to do a very interesting looking gelatinous cube, and who knows how it's going to work out, but I'll have a new video on that soon. So if you have any questions on making miniatures, getting cheap miniatures, collecting miniatures, painting miniatures, you know, I'm by no means I'm an expert about painting or anything, but I can answer simple questions. So again, unless this whole scenario was caused by like bots or something, thank you so much for subscribing, and I will be doing more D&D content as the month continues. There's a brand new set of miniatures which has a wagon in it. A wagon! Oh, it's so cool. I am totally psyched about that dumb gypsy wagon. I think it's going to be one of the miniatures that has like a huge amount of use, because there's so many wagons in D&D. Like the whole caravan thing, like they were kind of joking how the caravan thing with the wagon was the new meeting in a tavern. Now it's meeting in a caravan as guards. So there's a lot of wagons in D&D, and to have a full-size covered wagon as a miniature, I think that'll be very useful to a lot of people. Far more useful than another dragon. I'm going to do a video about I have too many dragons, and by God, I will never use the dragons that I have. I have so many of them. A lot of them are really cool, though, so anyways, ask your questions below. And again, thank you for watching the video, and you have a very nice afternoon. What the hell did I say that for? I don't know if it's afternoon. Thanks for watching the video, and have a good one. What do I always say? Thanks for watching the video. As always. What do I always say? I always say something. Have a nice night, and thank you for watching the video. I don't know, something like that. Let me look it up.
Have a great day, and as always, thank you for watching the video.
That's what it is. Okay. Have a great day, and as always, thank you for watching the video. Wagon. I'm looking forward to that wagon.